Hey everyone, Crow back again, and you may remember back in May of 2022, I put out a video that was an early access look at a game on Steam called Slot Shots Pinball Collection. It was a collection of pinball tables where each table had a slot machine element integrated into the table. The game was by Pinblend Studios, and they had offered me a free early access version of the game to look at and to make a video about. Well, a few weeks ago, Pinblend Studios contacted me again, offering early access to their latest game, an updated version of Slot Shots Pinball Collection called the Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition. This is still on Steam and will be released on February 6th for $19.99 USD, but it was mentioned that this would be out on Xbox later this year. Now, this is a separate standalone game that contains all the tables that were included in Slot Shots Pinball Collection, plus 6 more tables, all continuing with the gimmick of having a slot machine element built into the table. They'd only asked for in return for the game key that I quote-unquote create and post a video on YouTube that contains Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition somewhere in the title or description. And as you can see, I've done that. But before I get into talking about Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition, I feel like I have to backtrack a bit and provide a bit of history of Pinblend Studios because it'll help make a little sense of what's going on with Slot Shots Pinball Collection and Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition. Back in August 2021, Pinblend Studios put out their first release on Steam, and that was a single pinball table going by the name Neon Knights. And then their second standalone table was Outergalactic Aliens in September 2021, and their third and last standalone table release was Toonkeeper Mansion Deluxe in November of 2021. After that, they then released Slot Shots Pinball Collection, which I did an early access video on in 2022. At the time I looked at it, it had 3 new tables: Neon Knights 2 Skylines, Slot Shots Casino, and Bass Hunter. But then it also included a reworked version of the previously released Outergalactic Aliens, which had been changed to work with the slot machine mechanic. Throughout 2022 and 2023, Slot Shots Pinball Collection would receive several updates and several new tables, including Dream World, Super Vixel Land, and the Kraken's Cove. Now, to be clear, all of these tables were added for free as part of the game's main content. However, it's clear that they wanted to make more content, but really couldn't just keep churning out more tables for free. So that's where Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition comes in. It contains all the tables that were in Slot Shots Pinball Collection, along with 6 additional tables to boot. Now, before I go any further, I will say that Pinblend Studios has told me that if you already bought Slot Shots Pinball Collection, you may be able to get a discount on this new game by way of a discounted game bundle that they're going to try and create through Steam. So the way this works is that there may be a game bundle on Steam that contains Slot Shots Pinball Collection and Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition together at a discounted price. But if you already own Slot Shots Pinball Collection, the cost for the game will be subtracted from the bundle price, and you'll wind up paying less for just Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition. It's kind of a complicated way to do things, but in the end it works. As for how Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition plays, well, I am playing it in early access, but it's pretty similar to their previous game, though it does seem like there have been minor tweaks here and there. The ball physics are nothing like they are in games like Pinball FX or Zaccaria Pinball, but looking at it as it is, and that would just be a video game, the game is perfectly playable. My only complaints would be that sometimes the ball will seem to move faster than it should at times, and also the tables will eject the ball in places that you might not expect if you're not already familiar with the way the tables behave. Normally in other pinball tables, a light will flash on the table and you get a general sense of where the pinball will appear, but that just doesn't happen here. The whole gimmick of the game, which is the slot machine mechanic, might turn some people off as well, because your place on the leaderboard can vary significantly depending on how often you've managed to activate it, and as well as how lucky you are in those slot spins. And speaking of leaderboards, they do exist, but after every game you'll have to hit a button to manually upload your score, and then hit another button to actually see the leaderboard, which according to the note you see after every game, you can only do once per gaming session. And that just seems very weird to me. Normally a game would just show you the leaderboard and automatically post your best scores, But to be honest, I don't know if this is just a temporary thing that'll be more streamlined in the future, or if there's just a reason why the game has to do it this way. And I can say that the menus in general in this game as well, the way they're laid out and the way you navigate through them is just very odd sometimes. The one last negative thing I want to talk about is the cameras in the game. The game does give you 4 camera angles to look at the table throughout the game, but I feel like there's only one that's really usable. The first camera angle seems to bob up and down, and it just doesn't feel very comfortable. The second camera angle is, again, pretty low to the ground, but it doesn't move up, so you can't see the ball sometimes when it goes into upper playfields. The third camera angle is actually the one I use all the time. I feel like it's the best one. And the fourth one isn't bad, and it's a very high up, looking straight down at the table. The only problem is that there's some elements of some of the tables that you need to be looking straight on at to see properly, and you just don't see them with that camera angle. But the one thing that this game really excels at is the game audio. Everything sounds really rich and clear. Each table has multiple background soundtracks that interchange while you're playing, so it doesn't get repetitive. And while the loud musical stings that play due to the game's actions may sometimes overlap the table's soundtrack, I feel like it's part of the game's charm, and I really wouldn't want it any other way. So let's close out this video by briefly talking about each of the 13 tables included in Slot Shots Pinball Ultimate Edition, starting with the brand new tables. Neon Nights Ultra is an update on the previous Neon Nights table, which has a dark Neon City vibe going on. There are 4 main flippers and no outlanes, though it's very easy to drain under those outer flippers if you're not careful. There are also 2 mini play fields elevated in the rear of the table. Dracula's Pawn is the second new table based on, well, Dracula. Near the drain is the typical flipper layout with the 2 in lanes and 1 out lane on both the right and left sides. Extra flippers in the table include the 1 on the upper left and 2 additional ones for the mini playfield. Interesting items of note are the rotating pop bumper array and the castle facade in the background, which is kind of cool because you can see your ball pass through the windows when it enters the castle. Mystic Ballistic is the third new table, and it takes place in a mystical outdoorsy type of environment. Like Dracula's Pawn, it also has the basic flipper layout with 2 in lanes and 1 out lane per side. It also has a mini playfield, though this one is slightly elevated off the main playfield. Occasionally the ball will end up under the playfield in an array of rotating bumpers and targets. There's also a big tree in the upper right corner of the playfield that will rise up, revealing another path. Tombkeeper Manor is the 4th new table, and it's located in a cemetery in front of the house. Well, maybe I shouldn't say it's a new table, because it's one of those tables that was originally released on its own in 2021. And for some reason, it was just never included in the original Slot Shots Pinball collection. Though it's more than likely it's because this table had to undergo quite a bit of work in order to include the slot machine mechanic that was never in the original game. Well, anyway, like the previous 2 tables, the flipper layout is the usual 2 flippers with the 2 in lanes and 1 out lane per side, but there are no other flippers on this table. The interesting thing about this table is you can occasionally see an occupant peering outside the windows, and you'll also be able to see the ball travel throughout the house. Another unique aspect is the crypt, which will fire the ball at the house whenever the ball enters it. Ocean Breeze is the last of the 5 new tables, and of course it has you playing in and around the ocean. And just like the previous 3 tables, the flipper layout is pretty much the same, with 2 in lanes and 1 out lane per side. There are 2 additional flippers in this one, both of which are about midway up the playfield, 1 on the right and 1 on the left. There are some elevated portions of the playfield, one portion containing a roll of rollovers and the other containing a beach house where the ball must be launched into in order to enter. Below the playfield is an oceanic trench which leads to various table awards and effects. Finally, there's a shark that'll sometimes make an appearance, and he'll, well, take a beating from the ball, I guess. Dreamworld is one of the 3 extra tables that was added into Slotshot's Pinball Collection after I originally made my video on it. And again, the flipper layout is the same as the last bunch of tables. Here though, there's just one extra flipper that's midway up the playfield on the left side. The theming here is a mash of desserts with these cute characters and 50s diner music. Well, I guess that's somebody's dream world. I don't really know if there's much more I can say about this table. Super Vixel Land is the second of the 3 extra tables that was added into the previous game after I made my video. This table is video game themed, and it seems to be mainly influenced by Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda. The flipper layout is a little unusual here. You've got your 2 main flippers, 2 in lanes on the left side, 3 in lanes on the right side, and no out lanes. On the right side, there's another flipper where the out lane would be, but there's a bit of a gap between the flipper and the closest in lane, so it's still possible to drain there. There's a flotating, rotating array of 4 pop bumpers, and that's kind of unusual, and an underground section below the table with another rotating portion that can lead to another pop bumper array, coins, and a couple of other targets. The Kraken's Cove is the third of the 3 extra tables that were added to the previous game after I made my video. And this is a pirate-themed table with the 2 usual main flippers, 2 in lanes on the left and 3 in lanes on the right, and an out lane on each side. Nearly everything else on this table is pretty standard, though the pirate ship will shoot the ball out whenever it's entered. And oh yeah, there's a giant Kraken that emerges from the playfield in this one. Neon Knights 2 Skylines is one of the 4 tables that was originally in Slotshot's Pinball Collection from the start, and as with the other Neon Knights table, this one has a Neon City nighttime motif. There's the usual 2 flippers near the drain, 2 in lanes on the left, 3 in lanes on the right, and 2 out lanes on each side. The upper portion of the playfield is elevated, with the left portion containing a mini playfield and the right portion containing a pop bumper array. When balls are locked, it's revealed that they are locked under the playfield, which is kind of cool to see. Slotshot's Casino is the second of the 4 tables that were originally from the last game on release, and of course this one is casino related, which means the slot machine mechanic blends into this table the best. You've got 2 main flippers, 2 in lanes on the left and 3 on the right, and 2 out lanes on each side. At the back of the table on the right is an elevated mini playfield, and on the left there are 2 additional levels. The top level is another mini playfield containing a gap at the top to hit a reward on a huge rotating wheel, while the level below contains a pop bumper array and a path that can lead to a rotating funnel. Finally, at the front right of the table is a Pachinko-style array of pegs which can divert the ball into various rewards. Bass Hunter is the third of 4 tables in the original game, and it is the fishing-themed table. Most interesting thing about this table is the entire cabinet looks like a giant aquarium. This table has 2 basic main flippers, 2 in lanes and 1 out lane on each side, but on the right side there's a special trigger stuck in the lanes between the in lanes and the out lanes that can be opened up. There's an elevated mini playfield in the upper right-hand portion of the playfield, and occasionally lures will appear on the field, and if you hit enough of them, a fish will appear for you to catch. You know, because it's fishing themed. The effect of the table being an aquarium and seeing the fish swimming below the playfield is actually pretty cool looking. Outergalactic Aliens is the last of the 4 tables that were in the original game at launch, and this is of course our outer space alien themed table. This table is also released as a standalone game before the release of Slotshot's Pinball Collection. By the drain there's the standard 2 flipper setup with 2 in lanes on the left and 3 on the right, and 1 out lane on each side. Around the middle of the playfield on the right side is an additional flipper, and there's another pair of flippers in the elevated portion of the upper left-hand corner of the table for a mini playfield. In the upper right-hand corner of the playfield is a teleporter that will have the ball travel to the upper left of the table and then travel down to the lower left of the table where the 6th flipper is on the table's apron that can be used to shoot the ball back onto the playfield. But don't worry if you miss, because the ball won't drain or anything, it'll just put the ball back on the table anyway. The final thing to mention is the mini playfield under the table, which contains the final 2 flippers. There's a lot of strange and unusual things going on with this table, and that's keeping in line with its theme. Knight's Original is a slightly reworked version of Pinblend Studios' very first release on Steam. The table never made it into Slotshot's pinball collection, but it's been altered here to include the slot machine mechanic so it fits in with the theming of the rest of the game. However, you could kinda tell this is an earlier table as it doesn't look as polished as the other tables. In fact, this is just an earlier version of Neon Knights Ultra as it is pretty much the same layout. It's interesting that they put this one in here as they hadn't included it in the previous collection, but it definitely isn't on par with the rest of the tables in the collection. And that'll wrap it up for this early look at Slotshot's Pinball Ultra Edition. Now granted, things may be different when this game goes live on February 6th as the game is still being worked on, and it's clear it'll be worked on for the next couple of years to come at least, I think. I mean, hell, I think one of these tables was added while the game was in early access, so it's entirely possible there could be another table included at launch that I didn't even mention in this video, and I know there were several YouTubers out there that already posted videos on this game weeks ago, and there have been already several changes since then, like the fact that all of the DMDs for all the tables no longer look all the same. But that's the kind of stuff that happens these days with these games, and it's mostly positive that games get these kind of updates to improve them as time goes on, though the opposite can happen too, I suppose. But Pinblend Studios seems to be making positive progress with every update they make, so really in the end this is just to get this game on your radar, and if you're interested you could go ahead and add it to your wish list. And with that, I'll see you next time.